Welcome to the, what day is it? April 27th edition, 2014 of the Beatdown Report. I am the Clute, I am your host. We're coming to you live from Brick Cave Studios in sunny Mesa, Arizona. I've had we got a big show for you today. A huge show. Because this is a show that I've been wanting to do for months. But I keep getting distracted. But before we talk about that, I've for the last month, what I normally call day job has been night job. Not telling you where I work, because I don't want you showing up there bringing me cakes and celebratory glasses of whiskey to honor another good show. But I've been working the graveyard shift, and it screws with your perspective. I have been having the most messed up dreams ever since I started working the graveyard shift. Because you know, I'm sleeping during the day, and I'm wondering if all the light pouring through the windows is somehow screwing with my body's ability to enter REM sleep. So I don't know right now if I might be hallucinating this. I don't think so. I think this is a real show with real people. In the studio is Brick Cave Audio's Johnny Skinner, my producer, and with us is also Jen LaBuzz, which, by the way, is the perfect name for PR. If you want public relations, you want to establish some buzz, then you need LaBuzz. She's like, yeah, I've heard that before. And that joke needs to stop being made, Clute. But anyway, yeah, so we have a good show today. You'll remember about 2 months, or about a month ago, I had this whole show planned. It was going to be a great show. And then the Arizona State Legislature decided that they were going to pass or try to pass SB 1062, which, if you remember, was the anti-gay, I'm sure they called it the quote-unquote religious freedom bill. But let's call it what it was. It was basically a way to stick it to gays and lesbians and transsexuals and bisexuals in Arizona today. But so we had to stop everything. We had to put the brakes on that show. So I'm proud to say that today we are going to be doing this show. We are going to be doing the show on Fox News' Todd Starnes, and I'm very excited. Now, if you don't know who Todd Starnes is, he is... Oh, what the hell? No, I'm not. No, we're not doing it. That if you don't know, that's our amazing breaking news sound, and that indicates that we've got to change the topic of the show. And no, I'm not doing it. We've been wanting to do this show for a while, and I think it's important to talk about him because Todd Starnes is getting a foothold on the American political structure. He is influencing politicians. He is getting people to oh, come on. No, we got to do this show eventually. I know they're going to keep playing the breaking news until I submit, until I break, until I talk about breaking news. Fine. Breaking news out of Nevada, where rancher Cliven Bundy is about to issue a statement. Now, if you don't know who Cliven Bundy is, let's just quickly do this up in a nutshell. Cliven Bundy is a rancher in Nevada who has been warring with the federal government for about 20 years. And what the story is that he has been grazing his cattle, he is a cattle rancher, on public lands. Now, if you are a rancher, or if you are a devotee of the Burning Man Festival, you will know that the Bureau of Land Management charges fees to access public land. And the reason why they do that is so they can maintain the land, so they can maintain the infrastructure that lets people use the land. It's nothing sinister. It's nothing that everyone who does business, whether, again, you're running a anarcho hippie commune festival in the middle of the Black Rock Desert, outside of Gerlach, Nevada, or if you are raising your cows on federal land, you have to pay fees, and it's nothing new. This has been going on again since the inception of the Bureau of Land Management, which I think dates back to the early part of the 20th century, and was reinforced by court fiat and court decision and by executive order. And I know that everyone on the right wing hates Obama, Al Hussein, Barack Obama's executive orders, except, let's see, this one was not signed by Barack Obama. This one was signed by President Ronald Reagan. Executive Order 12548. Reagan's executive order established that grazing fees on government land. In part, it says that in order to establish grazing fees for domestic livestock on public land, the fees are as follows. The fee shall not be less than $1.35 a head of cattle per month. Now, he has been refusing to pay grazing fees for his cattle, and he has racked up, depending on who you ask, anywhere from the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands to close to $1 million. And he has been mooching. I mean, the right wing loves to talk about how, people who take government assistance, whether it's Social Security, whether it's disability, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, what have you, are mooching off of hardworking taxpayers like you and me. And by the way, for the record, I am a taxpayer. I got a refund. I got a pretty substantial refund. And I'm going to get to that in a minute because that's actually relevant to where we're going here. But yeah, so he's basically been in battle with the federal government. And this is a real deal argument. This is not like, you and your neighbor beefing over the dog jumping on your lawn. In April of 1995, someone had sent pipe bombs and set them off at a U.S. Forest office and 2 Bureau of Land Management offices. So we're dealing with next level terrorism here. We're not talking like flying planes into buildings because that requires a certain level of technical specification that I don't think these ranchers have, but it's still terrorism. So going further ahead in time after Reagan's executive order, which established the grazing fees, in 1998, a federal judge ordered an injunction against Mr. Bundy, telling him to remove his goddamn cows. I don't think they said it like that, but his cows from Bureau of Land Management managed land. He appealed, and he lost that battle in the Ninth Circuit Court. It took until April of 2012 for the court process to sort it out. And he hasn't yet complied with the courts. The Bureau of Land Management took him back to court after 2012. The court found against Bundy again. He had to remove his cattle within 45 days. In October of last year, of 2013, he was not allowed. Basically, the Bureau of Land Management said, fuck it, we're going to take your cows, and that's how we're going to sort this out. A federal judge told him, hey, moocher, they're taking your cows, and you have to accept that. You either pay the fees or you lose your cows. So that's when the shit hit the fan. I'm very profane today, I realize. I've been dropping swearing just like a sailor. But yeah. So on April 12th, Bureau of Land Management started taking his cows. Now, what was funny is he said to the media, I only owe $300,000 in fees. It's only $300,000. I mean, what could you buy for $300,000? That is crazy. And the fact that why this is a big media kerfuffle is because Fox News, amongst other media organizations, started promoting Mr. Bundy as some sort of martyr against government interference. Bundy lost every single court battle. The law is not on his side. If you are a right-wing conservative in today's media, you are generally a big law and order guy. But they have apparently put that aside because it was more important to stick it to, and let's be fair, stick it to Barack Obama. If this had been George W. Bush, maybe they would have said something. If this had happened in 1983 when Reagan signed the executive order, these people wouldn't be saying dick right now. But they are, because who's in the White House? So yeah, he's lost every single argument. He's lost arguments based on his alleged inheritance rights to the land, on the states' rights issues, on, I think he's even made some arguments about land disputes going back to the reclamation of the land from the native tribes. And, you know, it's depressing. So this week, Mr. Bundy, things came to a head, and the Bureau of Land Management withdrew. And why they withdrew was because the situation was getting extremely tense. There were people who were there with lots of guns, who quite frankly outgunned the federal government, which isn't a bad thing. You know, there's the old statement, people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. And up to a point, I think that is true. You know, we can't live in a constant state of hair trigger, mutual assured destruction, but the government should step lightly when dealing with the people. But, and there's a lot of buts in this one, they were executing a legal court order. They were attempting to do something that the courts, through the process of the checks and balances that we have established in this country, have given the executive branch, the federal government, the right to do. And a bunch of people were with guns and saying, no, you're not going to do this. At one point, there was a couple standoffs, which led to some physical interactions. And wisely, the Bureau of Land Management decided to withdraw in order to kind of diffuse the situation. So that's where we're at right now. That's where we were at until Cliven Bundy spoke to the media. And I think we have a sound clip of that. Let's play that. Let's play 1A. Okay, I think that actually might be Yosemite Sam. I don't think that's actually Cliven Bundy. Wait, is it? No, I think that is Yosemite Sam. So okay, that's not Cliven Bundy. That's the wrong one. Let's go ahead and play 1B. I think that might be Cliven Bundy.
Shut up, smack that pig. Only the strong survive.
No, I think that's early Kyler of Squidbillies.
Hell yeah! That's yours, Amazing Grace.
Oh, no, that might be Cliven Bundy. I don't know.
Get the hell off my property. Let's get on.
No, okay, that could be. You know, honestly, that could be Cliven Bundy. We don't know. This is the kind of incompetence that we're dealing with today in the studio. All right, do we have 1C? 1C is definitely Cliven Bundy.
I want to tell you one more thing I know about the Negro. When I go through Las Vegas and North.
Okay, let's just stop that there. There is no sentence that can be uttered by a white man that starts off with, "Let me tell you what I know about the Negro that is going to turn out well." That right there, that's like the beginning. It's like you just exploded on the launch pad. But let's listen a little bit more. By the way, this clip is coming to us from Media Matters for America. So let's let
Las Vegas, and I would see these little government houses, and in front of that government house, the door was usually open, and the the older people and the kids, and there's always at least a half a dozen people sitting on the porch. They didn't have nothing to do. They didn't have nothing for their kids to do. They didn't have nothing for their young girls to do. And because they were basically on government subsidy, and so now what do? They abort their young children. They put their young men in jail because they never learned how to pick cotton. And I've often wondered, are they better off as slaves picking cotton, having family life and doing things, or are they better off under government subsidy?
Okay, let's stop that right there. Seldom is the question asked, are people better under slavery? And I think that we can safely establish that from going back to the times of the pharaohs, where they used slave labor to build the pyramids, to ancient Rome, to the Umayyad dynasties in the Middle East, to the slave trade of the United States and Europe, to the modern slavery that's done in some countries in Asia and in Latin America and Africa, and sometimes in the West. The answer to that question is no. No one is ever better off under slavery. But apparently that's still a question that we have to address in 2014. Yay, humanity. We've done our job, right? Okay, let's finish off these remarks.
Yeah, they didn't get no more freedom. They got less freedom. They had less family alive, and their happiness, you could see in their faces, they weren't happy sitting on that concrete sidewalk. Down there, they were probably growing their turnips. So that's all government. That's not freedom.
Wow. Yeah, so there's that. So what happened after that comment was basically everyone on the right started fleeing from Cliven Bundy like horses fleeing a burning stable. Actually, I should say not everyone. I have had some interesting discussions on the Twitter this week. But let's talk about how this happened. So this is from the New York Times, dated April 24th. A column by Josh Barrow. Yeah, so what happened initially was that Cliven Bundy was speaking to the people who had shown up to kind of rally the troops, I suppose. And he had allowed a New York Times reporter by the name of Adam Nagorny to listen in, to tape the recordings. And it's disturbing that someone has to ask that question in this day and age. But what's more disturbing is some of the questions he asked after it. He made some comments about picking cotton, that they never learn how to pick cotton. And, you know, that right there, that goes back to the whole kind of Southern mindset that there's this noble view of the South, especially in the context of the Civil War, that the Confederacy was fighting some noble cause, and that everything in the South was hunky-dory until Abraham Lincoln and Seward got their mitts on the slave states. And obviously that's patently false. You know, you could look at the slave rebellions. You could don't even look at the rebellions. Look at the treatment in the diaries and in the writings of slave owners at that time, the cruelty that they were visiting upon their black slaves was unconscionable, but they didn't see it as such because, again, you weren't required to look at your fellow man, your African American, your Black American as an equal, as an actual human being. And that, for people like Cliven Bundy, for people like Todd Starnes, who have this gauzy antebellum, mint julep shaded version of the South. So that right there is patently offensive. But here's what he says next, which actually we don't have any audio of it. I wish we did, because I would really like to get him to speak this in his own words, but I'm going to say it for him. He asks, when we're talking about who is defending him right now at his ranch, he asks, "Where is our colored brother? Where is our Mexican brother? Where is our Chinese? Where are they? They're just as much Americans as we are. And hey, he grants them at least that they're at least Americans. But then he says, and they're not with us. If they're not with us, they're going to be against us. Now, that is like some race war shit. That is basically, one, it's 2014. Don't use the word colored when referring to black Americans, because I think we kind of, with very few exceptions, I think we've gotten rid of that. But where are they? That's a damn good question. Well, let's see, Mr. Bundy. They are inherently distrustful of people like you. And why? Well, one of the things that's been talked about is that this could be another Waco siege. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Waco, which you probably are not, but Waco, Texas was the hometown of a group of religious fanatics calling themselves the Branch Davidians. And they were led by a man by the name of David Koresh. And they had a ranch. Hey, apparently in this country, if you want to have a federal standoff, you better have a ranch. So they were apparently they were suspected of having weapons they shouldn't have. And we're not talking like, handguns. We're talking, I think the government thought they had like a 50 caliber machine gun, which I don't think is legal, or at least wasn't at the time or whatever. But they had a legally obtained search warrant and arrest warrant, and they were heading to the Mount Carmel Center at the Davidian Ranch to make some arrests. So the ATF, and let's forget about for a moment. Let's not debate the tactics that the ATF used, whether it was heavy-handed, whether it was not. What happened was the Davidians opened fire on the ATF agents. And what happened was 4 ATF agents were murdered, were shot dead at the Davidian compound. And this led a standoff that led for 51 days. And then the FBI, wanting to break the stalemate, they initiated a tear gas attack, which, depending on who you talk to, either the tear gas canisters started a fire, or the Davidians, realizing that the jig was up, set the fire themselves to kill themselves. And that resulted in the deaths of 76 Branch Davidians, men, women, and children. This has been a flashpoint for the quote-unquote patriot movement / secessionist movement. Any kind of anti-government literature you read these days will more than likely include the Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians who were overwhelmingly white. So people say, well, we don't want another Waco at the Bundy Ranch, which is admirable because you don't want 76 men, women, and children being burned to death in their buildings. But I mentioned that the Davidians were overwhelmingly white. And that, by the way, happened in 93. I remember watching it on TV. I was at lunch with my girlfriend at the time, and we're at Miami Subs in South Florida. I don't even know if Miami Subs still exists, but it was a weird little restaurant that you could get a sub sandwich and a bottle of Dom Perignon. It was very strange. We were not having Dom Perignon. We were just having sodas. But it's weird watching 76 people die while you're having a turkey sub. And I remember thinking that this was going to be a big deal, and it was. It led to other elements of terrorism. The Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, directly tied what happened at Waco to his rationale for blowing up the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. But going back to the ethnic makeup, we're talking about white people. Now, why aren't black people? Why aren't Latinos? Why aren't Asian Americans? Why aren't they storming the gates to help Bundy Ranch? Well, it seems to me that's because white America, or at least the white separatist movement, or the white patriot movement, or the patriot movement, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't care about, to quote Kanye West, black people. Now, why do I say that? Well, you may not remember this. And the reason why you're not going to remember this is because the media never talks about it. I remember watching this on TV along with the Davidian compound, but I watched this 8 years earlier. In 1985, there was I forget how many died. I want to look this up real quick. 11 people were incinerated in Philadelphia by the Philadelphia PD. Would it surprise you? Well, let's do a quick quiz at home. In 1985, the Philadelphia police incinerated 11 members of what group? Would it be the Symbionese Liberation Army? Would it be the KKK? Would it be... Well, I'll just tell you because I can't think on the fly. I'm very tired right now, and I don't want to conflate the KKK with this next group. But the group is called MOVE, and MOVE was founded in 1972 as a Christian movement for life by a man named John Africa. John Africa was a charismatic leader, though apparently he was illiterate. Dictated a document describing his views known as the Guideline to a community college professor known as Donald Glassy. Africa and his followers, the majority of whom were African American, wore their head in dreadlocks and advocated a radical form of green politics and a return to a hunter-gatherer society while stating their opposition to science, medicine, and technology. John Africa himself had changed his last name to Africa, and his followers had done the same, and they were showing reverence to the past, to Africa. And they were fairly radical. They weren't violent for a long time. Remember, they were founded in 1972, but they were in your face, as somebody in the 90s in a corporate board meeting would say. They apparently staged a bunch of rallies in Philadelphia outside institutions that they opposed morally, such as zoos. MOVE had very strong views on animal rights, which actually led to the initial conflicts. MOVE made compost piles of garbage in their backyards, which would attract vermin, roaches, cockroaches, rats. And MOVE considered it a sin to kill these animals, to any animal. So the neighbors like, hey, we'd like not to have rats and cockroaches swarming our properties, so can the police do something about it? So the police did. In 1978, the police raided MOVE headquarters in Philadelphia. And in the process, there was a gun battle, and one Philadelphia police officer was killed. A bunch of people were injured, and the Pennsylvania city of Philadelphia arrested, I believe, like 7 members and put them on trial, and they got life sentences. I think they're eligible for parole now. But so after this happened in 1978, the people of the MOVE movement, they moved to a different building. And there were a bunch of row houses in Philadelphia. If you don't live in the city, if you live in Nevada, if you live in a ranch, if you're listening to this right now from the Bundy compound, in Philadelphia, they live in some places live in row houses, which is basically house after house after house right next to each other, and you're basically separated by a cinder block wall. And, you're very familiar with your neighbors, unlike Bundy Ranch, where your nearest neighbor is probably, 40 miles away, and all you can hear during the day is this. Sorry, I should have warned you. That's what you hear on the wind at the Bundy Ranch at all hours of the night. And apparently you fall from cliffs in a comic fashion. But anyway, so in 1978, jumping forward to 1985, the people of MOVE held up in their row house and they refused to come out, and there was a standoff. So think about this. Now, here's what happened. They lobbed tear gas canisters at the building, just like they did at Waco. MOVE members fired at the police, just like at Waco. The police returned fire, just like Waco. And at Waco, what happened was the government used basically an armored personnel carrier to smash down one of the walls at the Davidian compound. In Philadelphia, a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter dropped 2 1-pound bombs of FBI-supplied water gel explosive, a dynamite substitute, targeting a bunker on the roof of the house. Think about that. Think about that, America. At least in 1985, it was acceptable for the police to aerially bomb your house. Now, if you're listening, I can't see you, but raise your hands if you remember this. Raise your hands if you've heard about the MOVE bombing, the MOVE standoff with the police in the media today in relation to the Bundy Ranch. And if you're raising your hand, you are a liar. Unless you're listening to the show, which I've just now informed you. I've just now broken through the media. I pierced the media blackout on this. But so to answer Cliven Bundy's question, where are his African-American brothers? Where are his Latino brothers? They are not coming to your rescue. They are not coming to defend you because in all your bullshit right-wing literature, you have never once stood up for the African American. You have not stood up for the Latino. You have not stood up for the Chinese or the Native American or anyone else other than white. And you're talking Ruby Ridge. You're talking Waco. These are all things that were done by white people. The context of the media is to focus and elevate the white man. And that's why Cliven Bundy, because he doesn't know about this. I bet you Cliven Bundy has never even fucking heard of the MOVE bombings. And that's why he thinks that's why he thinks that all blacks are lazy. He thinks that they're all sitting on the porch, which, by the way, great choice of word there. Not doing anything. They're not coming to your rescue because you have ignored them. You have abandoned them. You have turned your back on every single bit of police brutality and the prison industrial complex in this country. And only when it has affected you do you now issue the call to arms. And that is bullcrap. But as I mentioned, I had some interesting conversations on Twitter about this. And I want to relate some of them. Now, we reached out to this individual. Actually, we'll talk about her in a second. It's basically been like the 5 stages of grief with these people, with right-wingers on Twitter. And I believe the first stage is denial. And there was a guy, and I didn't print out this conversation. But if you go to my Twitter feed, which, by the way, is my Twitter handle is the Klute, which is the _ Klute, Klute, which, by the way, and even though we're kind of the last half of the show, you can send me a message if you want to talk. If you want to drop me a line while on the show, we'll answer your tweet on the air. But this individual was basically trying to say that Cliven Bundy didn't say what he said. That he believed that the New York Times was setting him up, that he wanted to see the audio and eventually the audio came out. And then I think the next stage is anger. And we had that in spades. So a friend of mine, Scott Woods, and I got involved in a Twitter conversation with Happy Carry Girl. And I want to start off with one of her tweets. The idea that we have to kowtow to the quote-unquote color agenda in America is slavery and bondage. Irony is so ironic. Okay, first off, my response was, what is the color agenda? Can you give me some bullet points? And then she responds with, are you a white male who has been whipped into submission? I think so. And then I asked her, well, you still haven't clarified what the color agenda is. And then she responds with, you will make a good slave. And basically, this is her basically not wanting to own her racism. This is Happy Carry Girl's decision to basically try to turn this on to me. And the typical other responses from her with, choose to be submissive to another man's personal profit and you are a slave. Your choice. So it basically kind of racist horseshit like that was happening. And then we had another person. Oh, and I forgot, one of my other favorite quotes from her was, show me a black today. This is coming from Happy Carry Girl. No, I'm sorry. This is coming from Francine69. Francine069, who says, show me a black today that actually came from Africa. So, they're not even hiding it anymore, people. They are just coming out and being straight up racist. And yeah, so then I had another interesting conversation with Pinal County poll. Someone had mentioned to him that people like Rand Paul were backing away from Cliven Bundy, and after these comments were publicized, and he says, well, that's what happens when people are deceived. So I asked Pinal County poll, so your position is that Cliven Bundy didn't actually say the words that he was recorded saying? Pinal County poll replied with, no, that is not what I'm saying. Listen to both clips and you'll see this is a direct quote. I am not making this up. Listen to both clips and you will see it's not as racist as the mainstream media wants. Not as racist. Not as racist is still racist. It's like saying that's not as blue as this other color of blue. It's still blue, asshole. It's still the color blue. It is still the color racist in this point. And so I came up with I think this is a good slogan that the right wing should use. The right wing, not as racist as you think. I think that'll work. I think that's a winner in the 2014 election. But my absolute favorite comments came from Arizona State Senator Kelli Ward. Now, we tried to have Arizona State Senator Kelli Ward on the show. We reached out to her. She did not respond. Her loss, because we would have loved to have a conversation, and I invite Senator Ward to come on to the show at any time. She has an open invite. We will clear our plate, and we will let her come on the show, and we will let her clarify our beliefs. But let's see. Do we have audio of her comments? No, I think that's actually just somebody Sam again. No, let's Twitter conversation. Now I'm going to read this, and I apologize. We have to find a way to maybe get like the Beatdown report players. When I want to read stuff off of Twitter, we have people come into the studio and we have them read tweets. But so I asked, and this is on April 24th. I asked, what's Kelli Ward's opinion? Because remember, Kelli Ward, I'm sorry, FYI, she traveled from Arizona to Nevada to stand with Cliven Bundy. So I asked on April 24th, what is Kelli Ward's opinion on, quote unquote, the Negro? Does she share it with Cliven Bundy? And she says, quote unquote, I disagree with his remarks. I support his First Amendment right to say them. Okay. Now, disagree. That's like, I would like to have nachos as my appetizer. Well, Clute, I disagree. That's a very neutral. Other people have been like repudiate or vehemently disagree or something, but she just disagrees, which I don't want to read too much into that, but I thought that was just an odd choice of words. And I asked her, are you sure you want to go that far out on a limb? And she responded with, I stand for stopping federal overreach and the First Amendment. And then another Twitter user jumped into the conversation, and this was Twitter user DFJKL, which, dude, I appreciate you helping me out on this, but get a better Twitter handle. And he says, asks, it's not an overreach to ask for payment for use of government lands. Do you give usage of your land free to all? And she says, it is overreach to send armed agents of a federal bureaucracy to collect a debt at gunpoint. That is not overreach. Happens all the time. Sheriff's deputies, armed sheriff deputies, are routinely called to foreclosure disagreements. In the movie Roger and Me, I don't believe Deputy Fred is armed, but it's still sending a member of the police force to enforce the rules. It's not overreach. It's exactly what the government does in situations where, by the way, Cliven Bundy threatened violence against the federal government by promising a range war. And unless Kelli Ward thinks that Cliven Bundy is armed with water pistols, when someone threatens a war, you take that threat seriously. And I mentioned that to her. I mentioned that armed agents were there to protect the people collecting the debt as Cliven Bundy threatened violence. And she said we got into a little bit of a snippy thing there. But then I mentioned it is hard work to do your job when an angry mob is being goaded on by politicians who don't do their homework. And that was a bit harsh. Then she says, how do you know? And I asked her to clarify that. And I said, how do I know what? That it's hard to work while an angry mob is in your face? And then she asked me, have I faced that? And that's an odd question. Does anyone out there think it's going to be an easy time to do your job when people are waving guns in your face and screaming at you? Because I think that's pretty much the very definition of high stress. And so I responded with, I faced a hostile audience or two. And then I remembered I actually have had guns pulled on me. Once in a non-political discussion where I had to talk my way out of getting shot by a bunch of farmers because I was trespassing on their land. And they literally lined us up and pointed a gun at us, which, man, that's like one life down. But, when I first came to Arizona, was in 2000, and I was protesting the results of the 2000 election, and I was at Patriots Plaza down in Phoenix, and a bunch of counter-protesters showed up strapped with guns. Now, they weren't waving them in our face, but the fact that they brought guns to a peaceful protest didn't make me think highly of them. It made me think that they were insecure, and they were, frankly, trying to outwardly influence me. I'm not intimidated by guns, but I don't necessarily want a gun on the table at all times. So I said, I faced a hostile audience or two, yes, so I imagine it's 10 times worse when they're waving guns in your face. She responds with, and this is the last thing that she said to me, LOL. Are you 12, Senator? LOL. Crazy. Let's listen to, and now she basically, by the way, says here, she's thankful for our amazing Constitution and First Amendment, and she says, if I don't agree, I don't seek to silence, or this is a quote that she gave to the Washington Post on the same day on April 24th. If I don't agree, I don't seek to silence or shame the speaker. Senator Ward, maybe you should be shaming the speaker. Maybe you should be sitting there telling Cliven Bundy that he's out of line, that his comments are terrible, and they have no place in modern society. You are an adult. You have the ability to speak clearly and calmly and to the situation. You have the ability to teach people when they are doing wrong. And you've chosen not to do that. You've chosen to accept what Cliven Bundy says as acceptable discourse in 2014, and it is not acceptable discourse. Saying that Black Americans are given a disservice because they haven't learned how to pick cotton, that he refers to them in 2014 as Negroes and colored, and basically sees them as parasites, that is not acceptable discourse. And you, as a public official, have a responsibility to help people out. And these are your own words, Senator. Let's listen. When you were running for office, this is a speech that you gave to the Kingman Republicans Men's Club in November 21st of 2011. How do you see? Let's see. This is how Kelli Ward sees her self as a politician.
So I see myself as a servant leader. I see myself as a person who is a shepherd looking out for the flock, but also a farmer being a good steward of our resources, and finally as a parent who's always keeping an eye out for my children or keeping my eye out for constituents. And
okay, if you are a faithful shepherd, a parent, your job, apparently as you see yourself, is to teach people to do the right thing. Is Cliven Bundy doing the right thing by denigrating 20% of Americans? You yourself said you see yourself as a shepherd. Well, Senator Ward, shepherd people. If that's how you see yourself, if that's how you want to help people, then do it. Don't be, what's that quote from Revelations? Revelations 3:16. Be neither warm nor be not lukewarm. You have to give people a kick in the ass sometimes when they're doing wrong, and you have refused to do so. I want to play one more quote by Kelli Ward, and this is her talking about people on welfare.
I I think that we should be doing innovative things like they're doing over in Golden Valley, where they're using prisoners to do work. But we could also do that with welfare recipients. If they're not bodily unable, I mean, there's plenty of things that we could do. Not to take any city jobs, not to take any county jobs, not to do any of those things. But there are things that are not quite as fun. Maybe that we could have some people that are on welfare that they do work in order to get their benefits, or they.
Again, that's just. I mean, if they're not going to do city jobs, if they're not going to do county jobs, but apparently you want them to do shit work, what are you going to have them do, Senator? People need to start minding their P's and Q's. People need to start watching what they're saying and realize and owning their own problems. Cliven Bundy is not a victim. Cliven Bundy is a scofflaw. And the chickens are coming home to roost for Mr. Bundy. And we all face a reckoning, ladies and gentlemen. And we need to watch out for those people who proclaim themselves to be patriots, because it is not your job. It is not your position to proclaim yourself a hero or a patriot. That is up for history to decide. That is up for other people to decide. It is not your call. Well, that was kind of a harsh note to end the show on, but that's where we're going to leave it today. This has been the April 27th edition of the Beatdown Report. And again, I want to, if Senator Ward, if you are listening, you are welcome to come on the show at any time. I promise you I will give you a fair and balanced, and I don't mean that ironically, I don't mean that Fox News style, I literally mean fair and balanced opportunity to share your views and have a discussion with, if not one of your constituents, then someone who may have the same voice as some of your constituents that maybe you don't normally listen to. Again, that's kind of a downer. I'm being really serious, and I want to end it on a light note. Anyway, this has been the Beatdown Report, April 27th of 2014. We are brought to you by Brick Cave Audio. You can catch us online at Brick Cave Audio. Your executive producer is one Robert Nelson, Bob Nelson, if you will. Producer in the studio today was Johnny J.R. Skinner. I don't know if he's still using J.R., but we're going to use that for today. Our PR person, who's also in the studio, who's very quiet, but I saw her laughing and smiling as I was doing my show, which made me feel good, because I like that audience feedback is gentle buzz. You can catch up on any of our archive shows at thebeatdownreport.podbean.com. Archiving brought to you by Podbean. We are live streaming via Ustream. Our theme song is Powerhouse by Raymond Scott, who is no longer with us. A moment of silence for Raymond Scott when we're off the air. And by the way, you can always donate to the Beatdown Report by clicking on the donate link, which is on, at least I know it's on the Podbean page, and I'm pretty sure it's on the Brick Cave Audio page. Instagram, right? We have Instagram now, so check us out at the Beatdown Report, Brick Cave Media on Instagram, and you can catch scenes from inside the studio. All right, we will see you in 2 weeks, where we will maybe get to that Todd Starnes show finally, as maybe if war hasn't broken out in Ukraine, or if Cliven Bundy hasn't, jumped off a cliff like Yosemite Sam. Let's see if that's still queued up. It is. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Beatdown Report. We will see you in 2 weeks.